Today's daf is Masechta Gittin Daf Pei Vav. I'm going to make it bigger over here. So we're discussing over here the topic of the Mishnah. The Mishnah discussed what acts exactly is the main part of a get. So the Mishnah on the bottom of Pei Hey Amid Aleph says Gufay shall get Harei at Mutaris L'chol Adam. The Tanakama holds that the main part of a get should say you're permitted. Permitted to what? It doesn't say what, but in the context of the husband giving this document to his wife, it's understood to be a get. Even though the language, you see that language, is a little bit ambiguous. Does that mean you're permitted to go to the movies? What does that mean? You're mutter l'chol adam, you're mutter to go with people. But it's understandable that the husband is giving a get to his wife. That's what it means. Rabbi Yehuda is much more stricter in the Mishnah. He says you have to write the following words: V'dein dehevet lechuminai. This should be between me and you. Sefer Terichen, a scroll of divorce. Igeres Shavuikin, a letter of leave. V'get Peturim, and a bill of dismissal. Lemahach, to go. Lihin Nasva, l'chol gaver d'yistzevin, to go marry to whoever you want. By the way, this is the language of the get, and I was encouraged. I sent out that clip of the Oldaf of actually how they write a get b'zman hazeh, so you can see that they go through the whole 12 lines of a get, and I think we do include a lot of this language in the get. So Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that it's not enough to give her a document that says you're permitted to anybody. You have to explain she's permitted to do what. She's severed and separated from the man and permitted to marry any person in the world she wants to. That is the whole point of the get. So now we're in the middle of the page of Daf Pei Hey Amid Aleph, Pei Hey Amid Beis, and we're up to Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Okay, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, and the Gemara is going to explain. What is the argument between Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbanan? Why do Rabbanan say that Hareyat Mutaris L'chol Adam is sufficient? So the Gemara says Rabbanan Sabri, Rabbanan hold Yadayim Shen Mechichas Havi Yadayim. Rabbanan hold that an ambiguous language that's just you can grasp an unfinished statement is considered to be a finished statement if in the context we can figure out that he's talking about a get. But Afagav, so therefore the Rabbanan says Afagav D'loi Kosav Lo V'dein, even though you didn't write V'dein. It's very clear that you want to cause the divorce with the paper in the hand. But Rabbi Yehuda had a problem with that because really you can think about it this way, that if it's not clear written in the paper, the woman is going to think that what's divorcing her? It's the verbal expression of the man. So why is he giving her a document? That document is proof that the husband said a verbal expression, but she's not going to know that the document itself is what effectuated the get. So therefore Rabbi Yehuda required more extensive language, and that's the way we do it. Rabbi Yehuda, if you don't have an ambiguous language, that's not considered that we can fill in the blanks over here. It's not a crossword puzzle. If it's not clearly written in the document, then it's not a good document. But the cost of law, it's the only reason what makes a kosher get. If you write v'dein, you write this is, et cetera, et cetera. This is what the get entitles you to do. The mucha milsa de bahagita kamagarish law. It's clearly from this get he's coming to give her a divorce with this piece of paper. But says Rabbi Yehuda, avaloi cost of law v'dein. If we don't write v'dein, Amri, she's going to say to herself, Bidibure Gersha, he divorced me with his words. Ushtara ra'aya ba'almahu. And the whole point of holding this piece of paper was to prove that he verbally divorced me. That's why Rabbi Yehuda requires that in the get it should be written in extensive language. So I bring you to Rashi on the side of the page, and Rashi, because it was so important, Rashi wrote you the language of a get according to his opinion, and pretty much this is what the universal accepted opinion I think is. But you got to watch that video. I think we have a different chumras and things like that. But you say patrus yasli lecha zeu taifus a get. This is the extra part of the get, the supplemental part of the get. Petaris yasli lechi ant plainis bas plainis. You are now potter, I guess, departing from me to have it in to say you mikagnas dena you were my wife until now. Now you're being let go. Pitaris means you're being let go. You're now being let go, separated, and you can move on, and you're now in control of your own life. Limhach lehinisnasva lecholdman yispitzin, to marry whoever you want. No one can stop you minyan medinan ula olam, from today and forever. There should be a bill of divorce, a document of separation, etc. Kidash Moshe Yisrael, and according to the laws of Moshe Yisrael. And this is the get. It's good to remember this Rashi on Daf Pehayim Abayz. So now the Gemara just goes through a few halachas of the get. Amar Abai, when writing the get. And Haiman, Amar Abai said, Haiman the cause of Gita Loilichta V'dain, the Mashma V'din. Make sure you write the word Vidain with a yud, because if you're going to miss the yud, make sure you write the Vidain without a yud, because if you're going to put in a yud there, the guy's going to read it as Vidinhu. That means that the law forces him to divorce her, but Vidain means this is your get. So you got to make sure that when you're writing, don't spell it correctly. Basically, Abaya is saying that there's no spell check for the sofer writing the get. So you have to make sure that the following mistakes don't happen. So, v'loy lichtav igeres, you shouldn't write igeres, the mashma igeres, which it implies a roof. The word igeres with a yud can mean a roof. Ela igeres, without a yud. V'loy lichtav limhach, the mashma le limahach, it means, if you write limahach with a yud, it means me from you. And that has no sense. So it's supposed to say limhach. As a limhach without a yud, it means you're permitted to go. Again, this is Aramaic language, but that's the way we do a get today, using the Aramaic language. Limchach, you shouldn't write limchach with a ches. Make sure it's spelled with a hey. That could imply that you're making a joke. If you spell it wrong, if you spell it with a ches, it becomes like the word joke appears in the get. And this they pointed out in that video clip, that they write it, make sure they write it with 3 yuds. You see, you never see a word with 3 yuds. That means you can be and you can go. Plus a yudin. The mashim havim this sisbim. If you're going to write only 2 yuds, then that means that it's that they wish it's going to be referring to other women, not to this woman. By writing 3 yuds, it makes it more personal that this woman is permitted to get married to anybody who wants. Make sure you extend the word of vav of shvikin and teruchen, that it should not appear that you put a yid there instead of a vav. The mashma terichin ushvikin, because if you left it with a yud there, it would mean that the women's the other women are being divorced, other women are being let go, but it doesn't describe that he is the one that is divorcing his woman. So therefore, you got to make sure to write it that way. Make sure you write the word kedi, because if you're going to write it with a yud, if you change the vav into yud, the mashma uchdi, it'll appear that you're saying the word nothing. Don't write li'inasva. The mashma lo nasva, don't get married. Ela lehis nasva, with a hey, that you're permitted to get married. Now the Gemara asks the question. The Gemara just basically asks the question: who is the halacha like? In a funny way, the Gemara asks the question. Remember, Chachamim said all you got to write is harayat mutaris lechal adam. Apparently, Abaya held that you have to, write everything like we do. But the Gemara still is asking the question: do we paskin like the Rabbanan, or do we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? Be'inim v'dan, or loy be'inim v'dain? Do we need v'dain or not v'dain? In other words, do we need all that extra language that Rabbi Yehuda put into a get? Tashma, come in here. The asking Rava Begita. Rava established a language that to be put into a get, and he put in his own words. Eich planya ba planya pota v'sarach yasplanisa insase that this man so and so is letting go of his wife, who was his wife min kadam dana from now miyam denan ula alam. She was his wife until now. So now, from today on, she can marry anybody else. But that's it. He didn't add all those words that we saw on top of the page. So if so, we see that Rava did not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. He just added a little bit of the language. So he didn't say Vidain. So mashma, it implies that Rava did not paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Answers the Gemara, Ula Taimech. If you think that's correct, Kula Mikama, there's other parts to the get that Rava could have mentioned that even the Rabbanan hold have to be written in the get. For example, you have to say you could go marry somebody or something like that. But even if he didn't write Vidain, Rava didn't conclusively write out the whole get. Elabeinin, of course, Rava required that. Perhaps Rava required even more to add the verbiage of Rabbi Yehuda. So therefore, the Gemara leaves it as we don't know who we paskin like. Do we paskin like Rabbanan or do we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda? But why did Rava make sure to put in the word miyoyim denam? You have to say that today you're permitted to walk out of this office, and in the get it should say from today you're permitted to walk out of the office and marry whoever you want. So we should not rely on Rabbi Yossi because there's some people who did not paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Rabbi Yossi is of an opinion that you don't have to say from today and on you can marry somebody else. Just look at the top date of the get, and it's understood that from today and on she can marry somebody else. So you don't have to write that. So, but there's some people who hold that although you write a date in the get, we ignore the date. So therefore, you have to write in the get from today and on you can marry, because just by the date alone, we wouldn't say that she can marry from that date, because sometimes a person writes the get way before he's actually giving it. Ula alam, why do you have to write that this is a get forever? Isn't it understood that when you give a get, it's forever? So la puke, the reason why you write that in a get to eliminate the thought. There's a question. If a person gives a get and says today the get is valid, but tomorrow I want you back as my wife, is that it? Can you give a get for one day? So he didn't know. We don't know. Maybe that's a question. Is it a good get or is it not a good get? So therefore, you have to be very clear in the get that the get allows the person to marry, and it does. There's no time limit on this get. That get lasts forever. And basically, if you don't write the get clearly, even though it could be kosher in the halacha, you open up the textbooks and it says halacha, there's always going to be somebody who's going to say, oh, it's not a kosher get. And the children born, if she marries somebody else, are mamzerim. So therefore, we try to cover all bases by making this get a very kosher get in all respects. Now the Mishnah, the Gemara just closes out the Mishnah. So the Gemara just describes like this. Asking Rav Yehuda b'shtar zvinin d'avdi. Interesting. Rav Yehuda, who lived probably in the 300s or I don't know 200s, Jewish people had real slaves at that time, right? Maybe in Bavel. So, and they sold slaves. You owned a slave and you wanted to sell a slave. So he established the language of how to sell a slave the following. Avda denand mutzdik la'avdi. You say this slave is designated as my slave. Upatir v'atem en churure umenalile umenarure malkuso malkuso. You're basically trying to, in the document, say that this slave has no claims against it. He is my slave, and I'm not. This is going to be a complete, free, simple selling of it. And not only that, the government, he never did anything that the government, he's a fugitive from the government. You're basically saying that you're clearing off that there's no problem with this slave. Ushim de inish loy islay. There's no sign of him that he belongs to somebody else. That's the point. You say that this Evet, as far as I know, is not sick. He is clean from any blemishes. You're saying that he had no blemishes on his skin, basically real sicknesses for the past 2 years, new and old boils. Basically, because sometimes if he had a boil within the past year, even though it disappeared, it's likely to come back. So you have to give that reassurance that there was no boils no skin sicknesses for the past 2 years. Again, if any of these statements turn out to be not true, the guy that sold the slave has to give the money back. So that's why Rabbi Yehuda established the language, the contract of how a person would sell a slave in his city or whatever it was. Now the Gemara just said there are sicknesses of the skin. So the Gemara asks the question, "My asuse, how do you heal a sickness of the skin?" Amar Abaya said, Ginbara umartucha v'kafrika. So Ginbara is ginger, and martucha v'kavrisa is slag from silver, and v'kavrisa is sulfur. Now v'chola dechama, the wine vinegar, umishcha dezeisa is olive oil, v'natpik, which is natpik, and chivara, white natpik, and you spread it over the skin ailment with goose feather. So the Gemara is just giving you how to heal yourself from skin ailments that make a person look ugly. New Mishnah. Shloisha gittin pesulim. Notice it says shloisha. 3 gittin a pasul get. That means it's not a kosher get. However, Mimni says if she got married with this get to somebody else, havlad kosher. The child is not a mamza, because in the Raisa it really is a kosher get. Midrabanan we say you shouldn't use such a get. Now, do we require her to divorce the second husband? That is machlekes in the Gemara, but we'll see in a moment. So there are 3 gittin that apostle. So here are the 3 examples. Kosa b'ksav yodai. If the husband wrote in his own language, in his own handwriting, here harayat muteris l'chol adam. Here's your get. 1, 2, 3. Harayat muteris l'chol adam. They ain't all edim. There are no edim. So we can see clearly it was the husband's handwriting. Now, either you hold that you don't need edim because Rabbi Elazar holds you don't need edim to sign on a get, or even if you hold like Reb Meir, eidei chasima karse. But the fact that the whole reason why you need people to sign on a get is to prove that it was the husband gave it over. But if it's written in his own handwriting, you can't deny that. So therefore, this Tana of the holds that even if it's written on its own handwriting and there are no edim, it will be a kosher get. However, if it's written with the soifer's handwriting, right? If it's written with the soifer's handwriting, so then we say it's not a good get, and the children are mamzerim. So that's example number 1. Example number 2 of a pasul get is, but b'diavad it's kosher. Yeshal of Adam. It has Adam on it, the Ein Baisman, but it doesn't have the date on it. Now we know it's so important to have a date on a get for various reasons that the Gemara gave before. So that is a kosher get, b'diavad, but it's pasul. You shouldn't use such a get. Yesh Baisman, but let's say it has the date. The Ein Bay Ela Eid Echa, but it only has 1 8, so it has the soifer. And let's say the Sefer wrote up the get, and there's only 1 8, but it has the Zman. So maybe the Sefer can be counted, the scribe can be counted as 1 8 by himself. Harei elu shloisha gittin p'sulim. The Mishnah repeats itself. These are 3 gittin that apostle. The imnisas, if she married somebody else based on this get, havlad kosher, the second marriage children are kosher. They're not mamzerim. So we do consider her as valid divorce, but b'diavad, it's only b'diavad. What do we require her to divorce the second husband? We'll see about that in the Gemara. Rab Lezer as a 4th one. It could be Rab Lezer. Afal pi shein olav edim el shenoson olav b'fnei edim kasha v'gayvun nechasim bam shein edim chaysim al get el tikkun olam. He says that any get that just has no edim at all is kosher, because Rabbi Lezer holds that what makes a get effective is 2 witnesses seeing the husband giving this document over to his wife, but they don't have to sign on the document per se, because that's Rabbi Lezer's opinion, Eidim Asira Karse. So therefore, that makes a kosher get, even though if there's no Eidim. The only reason why you have Eidim on a get is maybe the people that witness the event are going to die. So to make it an everlasting get, the get has to have signatures of Eidim. So those are the 3 gittin psulim, and we'll see more in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, "V'suleikya." Are there no other examples of a get that's pasul? Get yashan. What happens if a person wrote a get? He wrote a get in January, and he wanted to give it in April, but during the interim, he was maintaining relations with his wife. So that is a pasal get, because once you start writing a get, you have to move out of the house, and he didn't. So the Mishnah we learned before, that's a pasal get. So answers the Gemara, Hasam. So how come the Mishnah didn't list that as another example? Answers the Gemara, Hasam loy teitze, hacha teitze. Over there, you don't have to get divorced from the second guy. In our Mishnah, you do have to get divorced from the second guy. Says the Gemara, that's not true. Not everybody holds in our Mishnah you have to get divorced from the second guy. Even in our Mishnah, there's an opinion that holds that you don't have to get divorced from the second guy. So again, why didn't our Mishnah list get Yashem? And says the Gemara, there we allow her to get married lechatchila. Let's say the husband ran away and he didn't have time to write another get. A get Yashem is considered a good get, and therefore lechatchila she could get married. But over here, if good rabbis will prevent her from getting married. So therefore, it's not like our Mishnah. Ha'ika get kereach. We learned that before, that when a bald get, in other words, a kohen that gives his wife a get, they had an extra step. They made it look like a folding fan, like a fan, and on every fold, they had another aid right on it. And the Mishnah says that if you're missing those extra aidim, if it's missing, that's not a good get for a kohen. Even though there's two aidim, but it's a very serious thing that when a kohen gives a get, he has to have there's a different get what he gives, which require more eidim, and if he's missing any of those eidim, the get is pasul. So how come our Mishnah did not list off gate kereach? And it says the Gemara, Hosam havlad mamzer, hacha havlad kasha. Over there, the vlad will be a mamzer, and over here, the vlad will be a kasha. According to Rabbanan, who hold that even by a get kereach, if it's missing one of the eidim, if she marries somebody else, the vlad would be a kosher vlad over here. So then why didn't our Mishnah list off get kereach? It should be example number 4. Why does the Mishnah say only 3 examples? Answers the Gemara, Hosan teitze, hachaloi teitze. Hanich lemanda hachaloi teitze, lemanda hachaloi teitze, ma'ik lemeimar. In other words, the Gemara thought that perhaps by the get kereach, if she married somebody else, she has to divorce the second guy. But over here, you don't have to divorce the second guy. So we're going to say, very good. But there's an opinion over here that you also, by these 3 gittin, you also have to divorce the second guy. So again, why didn't our Mishnah use the word get kireach as one of the 3 examples? It could be example number 4. Answers the Gemara, but Mekusha like Kamari. That's an odd, it's not talking about a tied get, a get that, for a kohen. We're dealing with the normal get that a Yisrael gives to his wife. We're not getting involved with the complicated one-off gittin. And va'ika, one more va'ika shloi malchus. There was an Inyan to write the normal king, dating it to the king that was around. And if you wrote the wrong king, let's say you're living in the Roman times and you start dating the get as if you're living in the Greek times, so that it's a pasal get. So that's a pasal? These are examples that we learned previously. So the question is, why wasn't that listed in our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Hasam teitzi. In those gittin, you have to divorce the second guy. Hachaloi teitzi. Over here, in our case, in our Mishnah, you don't have to divorce the second guy. So the Gemara asks again, that would make sense. Hachaloi teitzi. If in our Mishnah you don't have to divorce the second guy, but if our Mishnah also discusses that you have to divorce the second guy, so why don't we list that if someone put in the wrong kingdom into the get, he dated it wrong, the wrong kingdom. Let's say if he in the United States, if you dated for the British, that's the wrong date. So how come we don't list that in our Mishnah? Answers the Gemara, Moikulok the Rameya. Then he'll say that that will be the opinion of Rameya, that if you mess up the Shloi Malchus, if you put in the wrong rulers as part of the date, as your quote-unquote secular date, you put in the wrong rulers. In other words, you're in the Roman times and you're writing the get as if you were in the Greek times. That not only is a pasal get, Rameir holds that the vlad will be a mamzer. That's a real b'diavad pasal get. For hasam avlad mamzer, hacha in cases in our Mishnah, avlad kosher, the vlad will be kosher. Now the Gemara asks one final question before we move on to the next topic. If you notice in the Mishnah, it said twice shloisha. These are 3 gittin examples of the pasal gets and if you get married, the vlad will kosher. And then the Mishnah repeated it again. These are 3 gittin, and nisas vlad kosher. So why did the Mishnah stress the number twice in the Mishnah? So the Gemara says, the reason why the Mishnah stressed the count of 3 in the beginning of the Mishnah, so not to include the examples that we're trying to say, get Yashan, get Kereach, or Shloi Malchus. So therefore, only these 3 in Nisas Havlad Kosher. And what is the count again when it says the number 3 at the end of the Mishnah? What is that excluding that would not be included in this grouping of our Mishnah? So the Gemara says, the Mu'ute ha the Tanya is coming to exclude the following brisa. Hamevi get memedina siyam. This is the beginning. It circles back to the beginning. A guy who brings a get, let's say from Italy to Israel, but he gave it over to his wife. The shliach gave it over to her. He didn't say before he so he violated a edict that the Chachamim required that the shliach should say before nechta. So if she married somebody else and had children, Rav Meir is so strict and says, Yoitzi, you got to divorce the second guy, Vlad Mamzer, and the Vlad is a Mamzer, Divrei Meir. So our Mishnah is excluding that we don't hold like Rav Meir, because that according to Rav Meir, exactly, it wouldn't be part of this grouping over our Mishnah, because it's not only a get puzzle, but also the Vlad would be Mamzerim, and therefore it's not listed in our Mishnah. The Vlad will not be a mamza. Keitzid Yasa, how should you do it if you the Eved gave it over before, without saying before nechta? Yitlenu hemeni, you take it from her. V'yachsav yitnel b'fnei shnayim. V'yom before nechta. You have to give it over again and say before nechta. Perhaps she would need a new kedushin from the second guy, but the kids will not be mamzerim. But nevertheless, it would be the evet a not a good get, and even goes to the extremes that according to Rav Meir, the child would be a mamzer. Oh, so if that's the case, then it wouldn't be included in the grouping of our Mishnah, where our Mishnah describes 3 gittin apostle, and by the evet, the Vlad would be kosher. Continues the Gemara. Amarav, if you wrote it in the guy wrote it in his own handwriting, and it didn't have Adam. And then the Mishnah says, the second part of the Mishnah says, Yesh olav kosav b'ksav yodai ve'ein olav Adam, Yesh olav Adam ve'ein boi zman. It has Adam and it has no zman. And the third case, Yesh boi zman ve'ein b'yechad. So Rav said, the kosav b'ksav yodai ve'ein olav Adam. So Rav said, ksav yodai should need it. It was written with his own handwriting. Rav repeated that the Mishnah talked about a case where a guy wrote it in his own handwriting. The husband wrote it in his own handwriting. What is Rav what is Rav telling you? What is Rav saying? She's talking about case number 1. Well, pshita ksav yodik tani. That's what the Mishnah says. The Mishnah says case number 1 if the husband wrote it in his own handwriting. Rav saying that he wrote it in his own handwriting, and he's going on the second case, where they forgot and left out the date of the get, but there was Adam on the get. So we need that the husband to have written in his own handwriting. The Rav said, why do we need the husband writing in his own handwriting? It's a kosher get because there are 2 witnesses at the end of the get. Ella Aseifa, it's on the last case of the Mishnah. When we said Yesh Beisbam, a get was written with a date. The Ein Boy Ela Eid Echad, and it has only 1 witness, but the Eved, it's a kosher get. So Rav added a piece to the Mishnah. We go to Amud Beis, another few more minutes. Only if it has the husband's handwriting, is it kosher? But if it was written with the handwriting of the sofer and 1 aid, that's not good. Think about it. If you have a sofer writing it and there's 1 aid underneath, you would think that the sofer should be counted as an aid, even though he didn't sign his name. The Rav says no. Only if it's written in the husband's own handwriting and 1 aid, then it's good. Ushmul Amar Shmuel says, "Afilik ksav soifer ve'eid sharei sheninu ksav soifer ve'eid kosher," because we have another Mishnah that says ksav soifer and aid is kosher. So therefore, even if the soifer wrote it with his hand but forgot to sign his name, and there's 1 other witness, it would still be a kosher aid, kosher get. The Rav, why wouldn't it be a kosher? Rav holds it's not a kosher get, but there's a Mishnah that says it is a kosher get. Midame, how can you compare? Hasam over there, tinase lechatchila. Over there, you have to read the Mishnah that the Mishnah is saying that it's a kosher get you can marry with, because there it's actually talking about a case that the soifer signed on the get. Hacha the Eved. Over here we're talking about b'di'eved, that b'di'eved you could only get married with such a get. So if it's b'di'eved that you could only get married with such a get, it must be that the soifer did not sign on it. So it's not a kosher get because the soifer is not an aid. And therefore the only way to make it a kosher get is if the husband wrote it with his own handwriting. Ushmul loy kasha. That means Shmuel did not have a problem with that Mishnah, because over there you didn't need the cipher to sign on it. You never need a cipher to sign on it. But it depends. If it's a well-known cipher who knows halachas, then you can trust that if he forgot to sign the get is a kosher get. Why? Because he would not write up a get if he wasn't instructed by the husband to write the get. And therefore, just by him writing the get and one aid will make it a kosher get. But if you're dealing with a cipher that's just a good, he doesn't know the halacha so well. So therefore, if he doesn't sign on the get, it's not going to be kosher just because he's writing the get. And that's why over here, it says that here we're talking about cipher that doesn't know the halacha so well, so only be the Eved it's kosher, not lechatchila. Anyway, the Gemara concludes. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan said the same idea as Rav. That Rav, it means that that we can't have a soifer be counted as an aid. Only if the guy himself, the husband himself, wrote the get, then it becomes a kosher get. Zimnan Amarav. So basically, I'm going to conclude. Give me another 2 minutes and we'll stop. But basically, what you learn over here, that the husband himself who writes a get, the Mishnah says that's kosher. That's for sure kosher. But the Mishnah according to Rav, tells you 2 cases of where the husband's writing the get. One is where the last case is when the husband had another aid along with his handwriting. And not only that, the bigger chiddush is that even if there's no other aid, just the husband's handwriting, there's no aidim, it still will be a kosher get according to Rav. Now, what happens? The Mishnah said that if they marry somebody else, then you have to get divorced from that other person or not. We don't know. The children are kosher. So the Gemara is going to finish off another 2 minutes and then we'll stop. Zimnan Amarav. Rav said like this, Teitze. She has to get divorced from the second guy, but the children are kosher. Zimnan Amarav loy Teitze. But sometimes Rav said you don't have to get divorced from the second guy if you implore and use these 3 gittin. HaKeitzad. Yesh labanim. If he has children from the second guy, loy Teitze. We don't want her to get divorced from the second guy because then people are going to say that those children are mamzerim, so we let them stay married. Ein la bottom, she got married again, but she didn't have children. Teitze, then we force her to get divorced and make sure she gets a real kosher get from the first guy. Masu marzitra batuvia v'kulam shoyi b'em sofek kedushin and sofek gerishim. Harei lecholtzes v'lo yimisyabas. Marzutra asked the question. Mishnah says, we learned in the Mishnah, let's say there's a person's brother married an arayas and a tzara. Now, we know that if he would die, there's no yibam over here because the arayas will pater the tzara, would exempt the tzara, the co-wife, from you don't have to do yibam. But let's say if he wasn't married to the arayas, he only gave a safek kedushin, or he already made a safek gerushin to the co-wife, to the erva, then you do chalitza. The kulan shayi ba safek kedusha safek gerish. Harei chaltzas v'lo misyam. Keitzav safek kedushin. Zarg la kedusha safek karav la safek kedushin. Safek gerishin is kosam ksav yodev ein lo b'edim yesh be'ein marzam yesh b'zman be'ein be'eirechad. Those 3 things that are a Mishnah, if the erva got one of these bad gerishin, harei zeh safek gerishin, and therefore we don't know if they're divorced, and so therefore if the co-wife falls to yibim, she would only get chalitza. If the erva married somebody and you say she could stay married to the second guy, then people are going to say that it is a great get, and the tzara from her previous marriage will be falling to Yibam and not Chalitza, because people say that the Erva was completely divorced. So the Gemara says, because so what if the Tsaro you'll do Yibam over there? Chashash the Rabbanan he. It's only a chashash to Rabbanan. You're only saying it's the chashash to Rabbanan, a concern of Rabbanan. Maybe it's not a good get, but in the rice it's a good get, and therefore you could do yibam to the second wife. Levi Amar Loilam Leiteitze v'chein Rabbi Yochanan Loilam Leiteitze. In these three cases of the Mishnah, if she gets married to somebody else, b'di'evet we let the second marriage go through. V'chein Amalula b'nei Rav Kalafta ben Huna hachi Amar Avuin Loilam Leiteitze. Loilam Leiteitze. Okay, we'll stop over here. That means Rabbi Yochanan said that your father said, Huna, that if she marries somebody else, she doesn't go get divorced. So you have to go over what these were the three things that are possible to get. But b'di'evet, if she married somebody else, we let them stay married, and the vlad are going to be kosher. Okay.
Shkaya, thank you.
Right. So the Gemara continues and says that Rabbi Yochanan said to the children of Rav Chalafta from Huna that this is what your father said. I guess Rav Chalafta from Huna, from Haifa, that Rabbi Yochanan, I guess, was a colleague of Rav Chalafta, and he heard him say that if this woman gets married to somebody else from the three Gittin Psulim, you don't get divorced. And then he said, if this kartzis that lives in the Omer would not violate the mechatas waters. That means if this certain type of insect sucks on mechatas water, it doesn't invalidate that water from spraying on somebody who needs to become purified from touching a corpse. But the Gemara, that's what Rabbi Yochanan said, that Rav Chalafta said. So the Gemara asks, my kartzis, what is a kartzis? Amar Abai said, the difta de bein kefi. I guess it's a fly that goes amongst reeds. I'm not sure. Mosiv Rav Daniel bar Rav Katinas. Rav Daniel asked the question against the Baya. Remember, any bird that drinks a mechatas will passel the mechatas. The Mishnah says, Kola oifis, every bird that pounces upon the chatas waters and drinks it, and poistless b'mechatas would passel the mechatas. Why? Because we are concerned that they took the water into their mouth and spit it back into the jar. And therefore, that would invalidate the mechatas. Chutz min hayoina, a pigeon or dove that drinks from the mechatas, it never takes something into its mouth and spits it back into the jar. The nation moitzetzes, it just sucks, but it doesn't spit it back. So that was the only case where something that sucks onto mechatas water that would not passel the mechatas water is the yoina. If what you're saying is true, nisne chitzmi yoina the kartzis. Let the kartzis be included in the list in the Mishnah as those live things that will not passel mechatas if it drinks from the mechatas water. And for the Gemara, loy psikale, it's not absolute, because yes, kartzis will not passel mechatas water only if it's gedola loy pasla. If it's big, it would not passel mechatas water. Ukatana, but the kartzis fly, whatever it is, if it's very small, pasla, it would passel, invalidate the kartzis water. Ba'at kama, and what is the size that it's small, that up until that size, if it drinks from the mechatas waters, it would passel. Until a kazais. So what we answered is that the reason why it's not included in the Mishnah as those things that do not passel mechatas water is because the kartzis will not passel only if it's larger than the size of an olive. But if it's smaller, so I guess it's not a fly. It's like some big large rodent. But only if it's big, but if it's small, it actually would passel the mechatas water. We learned in the Mishnah that what? We learned in the Mishnah that the halacha is that Rabbi Eliezer says, or Rabbi Elazar or Rabbi Eliezer says, that any get doesn't even really need people to sign on the get. because Rabbi Lazar is of the opinion Eide Mesira Karse. All you need is witnesses that see that the man gave over the document to his wife, but they don't have to have signatures on the documents themselves. So what is the halacha? Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav, halacha Rabbi Lazar begitten. The halacha is like Rabbi Lazar begitten. Kamrisa de Kami de Shmuel, when they asked the same question to Shmuel, Amar, he said, Apishtaris, and every document, the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. You don't need it. As long as there are outside witnesses, not witnesses on the document itself, it would still be kosher. Says the Gemara of Rav Sava B'Shtaris Loy. Rav holds that a shtar does not need witnesses. Any shtar, Haktari v'Goyva Minachasa Mishabodem. So the Mishnah says that Rabbi Elazar holds that not only is a get allowed if it has no edim on it, but it also can be used as proof, which will allow the woman to collect her ksuba even from properties that were sold to other people. So she has basically a lien on properties. So this get is not only a marriage document that the Rabbi Lazar permitted, even if there's no edim, but this get also is implied in the document is that she could actually use it as a debt instrument where she could collect on it. She could collect her ksuba money on it. So how could Rav say that it only works by Gittin, not by other civil documents? And says the Gemara, you're right. Rabbi Lazar Tartiyama, Rabbi Lazar holds two things. That it works both by Gittin and by Shtaris. Rav Sava Kavasa Bechada, Palaglay Bechada. Rav holds like Rabbi Lazar when it comes to Gittin, that you don't need witnesses signing on the document. But when it comes to regular documents, civil documents, business documents, Rav will disagree with Rabbi Lazar and hold that you must have people signing on the document. Rabbi Yaakov Bar Idi, Rabbi Shua Levi, Halacha, Rabbi Lazar Begittin. Rabbi Yanai Ama Afila Reach Get Boy. Rabbi Yanai says that if that Rabbi Yanai holds, at least when we read it straight out, he holds that if you don't have witnesses written on the document, it doesn't even, it's not even a get, it's just nothing in the world. Wouldn't even passel a woman from Kohen. It's as if he gave her a lottery ticket. So the Gemara asks, so it must be that Rabbi Yanai doesn't hold of Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yanai Leslie the Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Yanai does not hold of Rabbi Lazar. It's not possible. Everybody seems to agree with Rabbi Lazar. Rabbi Lazar is the universal opinion. It's only because Rabbi Lazar, the one that argued against Rabbi Lazar is Rabbi Meir, and most people do not hold of Rabbi Meir. And for the Gemara Hachikama, this is what Rabbi Yanai said. The Rabbanan, according to Rabbanan, which means Rameir, Afila Reach Get Boy, it's nothing. It's considered a lottery ticket. But he himself, Rabbi Yanai, would hold that that the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. Not only is it's a very effective get, even though there's nobody signed on the get. Rabbi What they're basically saying is the same idea, that the rabbis that disagree with Rabbi Lazar would hold that if a man gave a get to his wife without people written on it, without Adam signed on it, it wouldn't be considered as if this woman got a get at all. Even not only it's not considered as if she got a puzzle again. It's like she got a lottery ticket, and so that even if her husband dies, she would be permitted to marry Erni Kohen. But again, the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar. Shalach loy Rab Abba Bazarda Lemari Barmar Boy Minem Rav Huna. Rab Abba Bazarda sent to Mori Barmar, and he sent him, please ask Rav Huna, halacha Rab Lazar begittin or ein halacha. So ask Rav Huna who he paskins like. Adahachi, by the time Mori Barmar came to visit Rav Huna, Nach Nafshe de Rav Huna passed away. Amalei Rabba Brei. So Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, said, Hachi Ama Abba. But my father Rav Huna used to say, Mishmei de Rava, or Mishmei de Rav, halacha Rab Lazar begittin. The halacha is like Rab Lazar begittin. But Rabbi Seinu habekim b'dvar halacha Mishum Rabbeinu amru halacha Rab Lazar begittin. Amar Rav Chama Baguri Amar Rav halacha Rab Lazar begittin. The rabbis who knew halacha, which is Rav Chama Bar Guria, also said in the name of Rav. It wasn't just my father that said in the name of Rav, but Rav Chama Bar Guria, who was a rabbi who knows halacha very well, said in the name of Rav, halacha Rab Lazar begittin. Another version of the way the story went. V'chaveri habekim b'dvar halacha. V'talmidei Rabbeinu Mishim Rabbeinu amru halacha k'Rabbi Elazar begittem. He said two things. Chaverim habekim b'dvar halacha, and the students of Rebbe said in the name of Rebbe halacha Rebbe. So Rav Chuma Bar Guria is a person who knows halacha. A student of Rabbeinu HaKadosh, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, is Rav. So that's the version of what it was said. So I guess it was also not only Rav saying that halacha is like Rabbi Lazar, it's also Rabbeinu HaKadosh. Halacha karab Lazar begittin, v'chein also Ravin, Amar Lazar Amar Rav, halacha Lazar begittin. So we'll leave it off with that. That the halacha is that if a get, according to Rabbi Lazar, was witnessed, it was written normally, everything is kosher in the document of the get, but nobody signed on the get, and two witnesses saw the husband give it over to the woman, that's enough of to make her divorce. And the halacha is not like Reb Meir, that you need eidei chasima, you need signatures of two witnesses to be signed on the document. The halacha is not like Rabbi Meir, the halacha is like Rabbi Lazar.